everybody, and welcome back to the T.H.O. Movie Reviews Podcast, the show where we bring you passionate, honest, and insightful film criticism. I'm your host, Bennett Campbell Ferguson, and I'm here today with a very special podcast. As you can see from the title, if you clicked on this, it's called Feminist Lens, the movies of 2017, and it's not trying to trick you. We're talking about the movies of 2017 through a feminist lens. We're going to be talking about movies, all of them were either directed by a woman or have a female protagonist. And this is an idea that came from the first of my wonderful colleagues who is here today. He's Maxwell Meyers. Max, you just saw Pirates of the Caribbean with the Organ Symphony last night. Is your head ringing with... Dun 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 dun.
Oh yes, it was very. Actually, when it was playing, I was thinking, I was like, "This is really cool." But I was like, all I wanted was like all the other scores I really would want to hear, like in my day-to-day life. Like, I would love to see Gravity with the Organ Symphony now. That Stephen Price score.
Stephen Price.
That would be so good, and
Absolutely.
also just a thrill. Also, I got chips. Like when you go to the Organ Symphony, they sell you snacks, but you're not allowed to bring them in. But, like, on the movie night, you're allowed to bring them in. So I was like, I want to get some chips. And I was like, I'm eating chips. Like, the one food you're not, like if there's a not food item shown in a movie during a symphony, it's always chips. And I was
well, there are none in Pirates of the Caribbean. Either.
No
Unless
chips.
they're gold.
No. But I was like, here's the symphony.
Alright. Well, also here we have Hanna McGrath-Perdue. Hanna says she's not good at bantering. I disagree. I mean...
Awkward silence.
You did have a nice pause, like, even right after
I wanted the awkwardness to be suspended in time for a second.
You say you're not good at bantering, and yet you were the one who in our last podcast said "bitch please." So I mean, that's pretty damn good banter. I think
I get a little passionate, a little heated. It's not hard when you're surrounded by a bunch of people who love films as much as you guys. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, our final guest today, it's her first time here. I'm so glad she wanted to come out. It's Mandy Stark. Mandy, how are you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me, you guys.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for coming. Yeah. And Max was just saying you two met in boxing class. What happens today if we disagree with you?
You better watch out.
I've seen her throw a punch. I've caught a few of her punches, actually.
Yeah. Although, you can defend them.
Exactly. No, I know how to catch them. Dodging them, on the other hand.
Yeah.
Bad reactions.
Well, it is time to delve in, and Max is going to kick it off. Max, what's the first movie you're going to talk about? Although, why am I asking? I know what it is. It's Colossal!
It's Colossal. I mean, I think at this point everyone knows. I won't shut up about this movie. I'm just going to
No, you let me get this right. You like this movie okay.
Not just okay, Ben. If you listen to our last podcast that I was featured in, you would know that was actually my number one movie of last year.
Oh, I forgot that. That was your number one slot?
Yeah. It was... Again, I've said...
It was a colossal decision.
It was a colossal surprise. Oh, this is colossally disappointing. Anyways.
Tell us about Colossal
through a feminist lens, real quickly, I'm sure you've all heard me talk about how much I love it. Favorite movie of last year. The movie's about Anne Hathaway. Her life kind of falls apart. She kind of loses her job. She's living with her boyfriend who kicks her out because she can't stop drinking and partying.
Her boyfriend, Matthew Crawley.
Matthew Crawley, yes. The same one. And then she ends up moving back to her parents' house, runs into an old friend, and then also discovers that she is manifesting a monster in South Korea at a certain time of day and destroying it every morning if she's in the certain area. And that's not even the main surprise of the film. I'm going to go with spoilers today as much as I can, carefully.
Wait, we're not doing spoilers, or we are?
I said I am, but I also know...
Spoil away!
I kind of think, spoilers are sort of essential to any, good discussion.
At this point, I'm going to go with spoilers.
But thank you both for warning everybody.
Yes.
Otherwise, people will be like, you
how dare you spoil that movie that you've recommended to everyone at almost every single podcast. God. The point of the movie really is, she's destroying South Korea there's a monster, but she also runs into Jason Sudeikis, who's an old friend of hers, who is kind of that stereotypical nice guy, the one that's like, I'm going to be there for you, let me help you out, but then he's upset that you're not dating him. I think a lot of women are put into that position. I think every woman knows at least one guy in their life that has been that nice guy that's there for them, or always the friend zone guy, as they describe themselves. Mm-hmm. And really, he is actually the monster of the movie, and he actually ends up becoming more of a terror than her in South Korea, which seems really stupid to say, seeing as she's a giant monster killing 1 million people. But
she apologizes for it.
She does apologize for it, and she
Korean in the ground.
And she ends up really taking control. But what I really love about this character is when I was watching it, I tend to watch movies a lot of the time from a writing standpoint. I get really angry if a script just doesn't make sense, and what I loved about this is that her character makes so much sense. My life fell apart and I had to move back home with my family, and just that weird floating feeling and just that like trying to be okay while also at the same time you just don't feel okay and you don't really know how to fix it, but you kind of keep going along and you kind of hurt people along the way. Just these things you learn when everything kind of crumbles, and just her reactions to everything felt so real to my situation. I was like, this feels real. And then on top of that, to bring in the whole Jason Sudeikis nice guy element felt refreshing, because I was like, this is all very real. And that's what I really liked about it. She's a strong character because she also figures out that what's going on, how to fix it, and she murders a guy to do it. Spoilers. And it's a badass way. I love it. And just the whole portrayal, I guess that's what I think really drew me to it, is it felt real. I feel like sometimes we watch characters who are it's like they're going into a situation that we've been through before, but you watch, you're like, that's not how you would react. But I felt every moment, everything made sense throughout the whole movie, and I loved it. And I just love the fact that she was like, you know what, I'm not going to put up with this guy. And she fights. They go into a brawl. She, throws a chair at him. He jumps out a window. She punches him. This woman fights. She does not ever once come off as weak. She is always trying to be stronger, and I love that. I think that was great.
Mandy, did you see Colossal?
I did, yeah. I haven't seen it since it came out in theaters, but I saw it in theaters.
No, that's exactly when. I keep refreshing unintentionally.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it. There was one thing I'll point out that I didn't particularly enjoy about her character.
Please do.
I felt like, it ended up being more about her relationship with Oscar, I think his name was, and Jason Sudeikis' character. And I thought it would have been really nice if it had been more about her empowerment over defeating her alcoholism, which had kind of disappeared really quickly. And I don't think we really saw a lot of ramifications. The only people she hurt were her awful boyfriend anyway.
Yeah.
And then the people in South Korea who we never really saw.
Yeah.
And so there was kind of like an afterthought. And she even began drinking the next day.
Yeah. I think what I really got from that is, I don't know, when I kind of went through a similar situation, and I wouldn't say I got a drinking problem. I didn't have one. That would be weird. But I was drinking more, and then you just figure out ways to kind of numb the pain. And then one day, I think if you're not in too terrible of a situation, which, mine was just a breakup, in the grand scheme of things, really isn't that earth-ending. You just kind of stop. Yeah, and I think that's why it made sense, is that she had a problem, but I think she started to realize, she was doing more damage. It wasn't just a boyfriend now. She was drunkenly stumbling through a playground. And then also, you notice that as she kind of, tapered off hers, Oscar picked up his. He started picking up the slack. And I think that's why it felt real, too. Because, again, in that situation, you just kind of... you kind of go hard for a while, and then you just kind of start to slowly scale back. You're like, what am I doing? How can I... This isn't helping. And I think that's why it made sense to me, and I probably didn't catch that.
Yeah, and part of it could be, I went in thinking this was going to be a film about a woman, overcoming her alcoholism, and it became so much more.
Exactly. I kind of went into it, and I was like, okay, so she's a monster? I don't see what the surprise is, only to go, oh shit, this is about relationships.
Yes.
that's I think why, because I think it caught me. I was like, maybe it is going to be about alcoholism or getting her life back together. No, it's about this other really scary thing. And I think monsters are scary. I think people have used monsters as, like, in symbolism and film and literature and art for years. But I think it's the scariest monster. I think it was interesting to see literally a 100-foot tall monster and actually be the scariest person is the nice guy trying to help you.
Yeah.
Because I feel that's so much more relatable than I've never had to face a monster, but I have seen some scary nice guys, and it's not fun.
Well, I want to open up a question. You know, one thing that I think this is interesting about this movie, and I'm curious because I think, you know, this could be read as a flaw, or it could be read as something that was planned. I was thinking about the Bechdel test in relation to this movie, and I was thinking, like, the movie actually does not pass the test until the last scene right before the credits.
Oh,
like, kind of like she's emerging, you know, from, I mean, because really this movie's about her relationship to men.
Yes.
It's about her battles with, you know, men who range from, you know, just stupid to, you know, downright dangerous in the case of Sudeikis. And I'm just curious, you know, what, you know, you, Mandy and Max, what you think about that idea that it isn't really until the end that she speaks to another woman, and if is that part of the redemption, or should there have been, like, another, you know, major female character, or...
Good question.
I think I don't know. I think this was kind of the year, if we're going to break the Bechdel test, why not? This movie's already throwing out a lot of things. I think to add in a female character for the sake of a female character would have muddied it.
But we could have easily switched one of the bar guys out for a chick.
And, you know, I could think of that too, but then my next thought is, well, if you have one other nice chick hanging around, what's to say that Jason Sudeikis wouldn't have already been a creep to her and driven her away, much like he did his wife.
It could also add a whole different layer of a relationship and friendship.
Oh my goodness. Goodness gracious. And that could
Colossal 2, anybody?
and that could be a missed opportunity, but I also think maybe it's still coming through the lens of a man who wrote and directed it. Maybe it was just safer that he didn't touch it. I think there is the potential it could have been good, but I think overall it's better off that it didn't. And I think you can't do a movie about toxic relationships and have it be past the specific Bechdel test. Even if there was a woman, then they'd still have to talk about men. Yeah. And then it would break the test again. So I think that would be my thought. I don't know if it's a detriment, but maybe just an okay pass.
I think you both make, you know, great points in this. I mean, this is a really bold and interesting movie, and, you know, there are some things I love about it. There are some things I don't love so much, but I think it says a lot of it, that, you know, it engages with these kinds of things. Mm-hmm. You know, brings up these discussions. Mandy, let's move on to you.
Okay.
I believe you're going to talk about the movie that made me realize that, wow, if I have kids, I am never sending them to veterinary school.
Wait, what?
Just don't make them vegetarians. So I chose Raw. It's a French horror film by female director Julia Ducournau. I know I said that wrong. I'm silly, Julia.
I'm pretty sure
that was accurate.
I
was trying to figure out how to pronounce that before all this.
Yeah. And I love French horror films. I'm a horror fan anyway. The French in particular can be pretty brutal. So I chose Raw, and I hadn't seen it when I chose it, so I'm glad it worked out. But I watched it, and it's follows Justine. She's this freshman university student, raised vegetarian, and it's kind of her first couple weeks in school. Her sister's already been there for a year or two, and she goes through a hazing period. And during this hazing period, she's forced to eat meat for the first time, rabbit kidney, actually, and it awakens a hunger in her, both metaphorically and realistically. And, you know, like every great horror film, there's an underlining commentary underneath the story. And this one has a lot to say about how we treat women, I guess, and kind of the violent adolescent period we go through. So that has a commentary on food. She's often felt shamed for her desire to eat. And then, yes, it is people in this.
Oh.
But I think we know what that really means. So people are, there's at one point she barfs out, she takes out hair that she's eaten, and a fellow student gives her advice on how to better puke.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I mean, there's just like, small moments where you're just kind of like, ugh, yeah. But the other, look at my notes. The other one, too, is just the sexual appetite. She has a gay roommate, and she's constantly pursuing him, and she realizes he might be a little bit more fluid in his sexuality, and they do end up having sex. But she really has to bite into herself because she's biting into herself because she has this hunger and she can't put it towards someone else. She feels shame for it, so she has to attack herself for it. And I don't know. It's an interesting film. I think it has a lot to say about growing up as a female and having to become comfortable with who you are as a person, both internally and outwardly. And that's why I chose it.
You answered the question that I was going to ask, which is I was so, I am so squeamish. So this was, I really liked the movie, but it was challenging for me, and so I was just kind of I had a very visceral reaction, oh my God, look at her skin after all the scratching, what the fuck, so I couldn't think through it, and I couldn't what does it all mean? So I was going to ask you, what you think it's a metaphor for, because I assumed it was a metaphor.
Yeah,
so.
I think it's just kind of coming out of your own innocence and becoming who you are as a person, while at the same time feeling all the shame directed at you for wanting to be who you are.
And then remember when this came out, I heard it had a very aggressive feminist message in it, but just mostly about this is what it's like. It's more I guess they just were going with this less subtlety. But did you think, with Colossal, I was I felt a real direct link to the main character because I had gone through almost a similar example, but literally. Yeah. Did you feel any connection through the main character, through your own experiences? Now, obviously not because you ate people, but because you're I get that this is about this, and that reminds me of my experience with this.
Good question.
Unless you do eat people, then it's more literal question.
I mean, you could go with the literal. I was just...
There's no judgment here.
Funny thing, you guys.
How safe is this space if cannibalism is okay?
Yeah, not the space I want to be a part of.
I don't know. I think the sister bond, there's a really good sister relationship in this movie that kind of goes, they love each other, but they humiliate each other, put each other down, but they always forgive each other and come back to each other, and they're jealous of each other, and there's just so many, such a conflicted relationship, and I think that's what I personally really liked about the film. I got what the film was saying, and I appreciated it. I don't know if I connected with the cannibal, the cannibal way of telling the story, but no, yeah. So.
You're right. You're a big horror fan.
Yeah,
did you see Raw?
So I was so excited. I was so excited when you said you were a horror fan, because horror is one of my favorite genres, and I love feminism in horror, and I love tearing apart feminism in horror in quotation marks, and men making horror movies that are supposed to be feminist, backlash to rape, and the rape revenge story has been done so often in horror.
They always have to add it.
Always. And so I'm so excited to get to talk to you. That being said, I haven't seen Raw. I've been meaning to, but I'm also really squeamish. So even though I love horror, it takes me a long time to mentally be okay, there's gonna be people getting eaten. There's people are gonna be eaten. You gotta be ready. And so I haven't seen it yet, but I did have a question for you, which is there's been a lot of horror movies recently that are centered around female characters, but like I said, a lot of times they come from the male perspective. First of all, is this directed or written by?
It is
It's directed by
by
that woman, right? Did you feel like it was an obvious difference to you than other horror movies, that it's that main female character, but it's through the lens of like a male director or writer's idea of like powerful women in horror? Or did you feel like this, like, did you see that it is a stark difference, or was it not?
I could tell as a female director because so many of the small moments were so, they were moments that I recognize, that I've gone through personally, that I don't think a male director would know to put into a film.
Mm-hmm.
So I could recognize her for that reason.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
That's awesome.
Mentally preparing myself.
Just wait. I mean, there's
but wait, there's more.
that thing with the hair, like.
Oh
wow,
yeah, I was like,
that is like, I mean, oh my gosh.
That's it. I think my favorite scene was the scene that everyone had problems with, like, with their stomachs. And I was like, I was in love with that scene. Like, because there's a scene where she gets an opportunity to eat meat, human meat, and it's her sister's. And her sister wakes up as she's eating, and it's just like, it's really funny. I don't know, I thought it was almost comedic.
And the funniest thing I thought was that her sister lies about it to protect her.
Yeah.
Like, you're like, oh, you ate my finger, but I'll cover for you.
Well, she recognizes a familiar soul now.
Wow, talk about bonding. That's
Holy.
Anyway, check it out, you guys. I think you'd really like it.
I'm really glad I skipped that this last week. Not the right headspace for that.
All right, I got a movie to talk about.
What do you got?
My movie is about a woman so cool that at the United States box office, she beat Spider-Man, Wolverine, the Guardians of the Galaxy, Thor, and the entire Justice League to a bloody pulp.
Yay!
You know what movie I'm talking about? It's Wonder Woman.
Wait, she beat her own team?
Yeah. This is how great Wonder Woman is. Viewers were like, yeah, if Batman and Superman are around her, it takes away instead of having. That's how great she is.
Wonder Woman is so great that the men around her ruin it.
Yes, literally.
Once again, men.
Including Joss Whedon. Sorry, Joss.
Though everyone wants to get that Zack Snyder cut. Oh my gosh,
it's
an obsession.
I'm
It's not gonna be any better.
It's not.
It's probably not even a thing. Like, it's probably
not.
even.
It's not.
It's just raw.
Like raw footage.
Yeah.
I'm not a Snyder fan, but at the same time, I kind of think like these people who are hardcore Snyder fans, like, and want a Zack Snyder cut, like, I don't get it, but. Come on, Warner Bros., just give it to them, because they're, like, obsessed. I think they're going to burn, like, the whole nation down.
Don't get me wrong, I would actually watch it, because unlike watching a director's cut of a Zack Snyder film, I'm going to go, okay, I guess it makes a little more sense. I would actually like to see how different they are. Like, I would actually be very interested in that, because they're literally two different directors.
I'd be curious, too.
Getting
on to Wonder Woman.
Wonder
Woman. All of you know this about me. I'm a huge superhero fan, and not just because of the incredible craft that directors like Sam Raimi, Christopher Nolan, Jon Favreau, so many others have brought to the genre, but also just because of what superheroes meant to me growing up. When I was in middle school and I was a shy, nerdy kid, I related to Peter Parker, and like saw him as kind of like a mirror of who I was at that time, but also a mirror of who I of something to aspire to, because of course he was better than me. He was saving pizza and kids from getting hit by a truck. But like over time I've become very weary of superhero movies, as much as I love the genre and I love the mythology, and part of that's just because of the individual, shoddiness of, films, whether it's Man of Steel or Thor: The Dark World or what have you. Part of it's because of that. Oh god, yeah. But also because I think part of it is these stories, where, they're being told about the same kinds of people by the same kinds of people, all male directors telling, stories about male superheroes and,
the same ones.
The same one.
Over and over.
Literally, Spider-Man got rebooted 3 times before Wonder Woman
got one chance.
yeah, it's ridiculous. And so I'm so glad the cycle was finally broken, and although there's still a lot of work to do, obviously, and it couldn't have been broken by better people than Gal Gadot and Patty Jenkins, and I guess I really think Wonder Woman as a movie, in some ways it's kind of like a return to basics. Like, the story's very much a Joseph Campbell type hero's journey. She's called to adventure, she has to leave home, she undergoes trials, she gains some kind of new knowledge about the world, and so I appreciate that it's kind of, blowing away the cobwebs, of other, superhero movies, like in, Man of Steel, when we're messing around with, phantom drives and world engines or whatever the hell those are. But at the same time, it is something new. It is a step forward, and I thought really, like, it was a kind of radical thing to, make a feminist superhero movie, but, like, about a woman, like, who isn't from our world, but is from a feminist utopia, essentially. This island of all women, where they're all, like, out, like, learning to fight, with this great view of the ocean, and then, you have, as a result, she's able to come into our world and, say things like, why must a woman, dress like this or do this, and just kind of say it as, this is just the obvious truth. Things, should be like how they are in my world, and I thought that was, like, so profound, because it makes you go, like, yeah, she's right. Of course, it is kind of a duh, moment, and I just I think it's such a great story. It's such an emotional story, and I know I bawled all over the ending, in our last podcast, but I think I love how it ends with her, losing almost everything, losing the love of her life, losing her family, losing her home, but she still has the strength to go on. I'm really glad now that girls who were the age I was when I was, worshipping Spider-Man, get a movie like this. But, I also know that, and Wonder Woman, she's an inspiration for all of us. She inspires me, and, thank God we have her, because there's not a lot else going on in the DCEU right now.
No.
Well, and also, just to add, I think it's, it is nice to just have someone just kind of saying these things that are out there, and, like, I don't know, I think you brought up a really good point about, like, she's just saying how things should be, like, duh, just obvious things and pointing them out, and I think that is important. Nowadays, like, I feel like some women don't feel like they can just point out what's wrong, and I think it's nice to have a superhero going, well, duh.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I had something
I was gonna
better.
say, I still can't believe they almost wanted to cut out No Man's Land scene.
I know!
That's
The
like
best
the
scene.
Yeah, that's insane.
And talk about female empowerment.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know, I'm cheering.
But I think them wanting to cut out that scene says a lot about, like, how powerful we want to see women. Like, we want to see her be kind of badass, but not, like, No Man's Land badass. And including her in that, and, like, including that scene, I mean, it was crucial to the movie. It really was. And I think you're right that there is a lot of power in her kind of basically just coming in from this, feminist utopia of strong women and just pointing out the absurdities that we, just accept of, like, sexism and gender roles and ideas in our society. I think that she is kind of the perfect person to come in and do that right now. I think it's really important. And I'm glad, like, it's like a double-edged sword. Like, she never should have had to succeed as much as she did to be taken seriously. But I'm glad that we're finally seeing movement towards, like, a Black Widow movie, finally.
Yes,
and other things
finally.
like that. And hopefully, as those things move forward, we're not continuously letting Zack Snyder and Joss Whedon make horrible movies while women are, like, you make one, which we've talked about in other podcasts, and it just never happens again. So I hope that with the success of this and the fact that Patty Jenkins basically said, like, screw whatever they did in the Justice League. I'm going to do Wonder Woman 2 is going to be my movie the way I want it. Ignore this 100 years being sad about Chris Pine. I mean, I'm glad she's taking control of her movie and her story and going forward with that. And so I hope within kind of nerdom and all of these films and all these universes, we get more characters like that, because holy shit, I am bored. Like, I don't need another Spider-Man. We don't have a Superman as good as Chris Reeves. I've said it before, I'll say it again.
No one's arguing with
Batman is a travesty. Like, I'm so bored. Everyone's bored. Your movies aren't making money, and it needs to move forward. Like, this movie made the money that they expected all of those other movies to make. No. And so I'm excited. And I'm not a huge fan of Joss Whedon's Black Widow, but I'm excited that...
I don't think he's actually doing...
Yeah, but it's his Scarlett Johansson, that whole character and how he created and that.
Actually, what I recently read an article that someone, I think is really funny, they said that Scarlett Johansson is supposedly asking for $25 million to do the Black Widow movie.
Mm-hmm. You know, that's actually very modest, because like Robert Downey Jr. got like $50 million or something for the Avengers, or something absurd like that.
I mean, I've been reading about like people demanding a Black Widow movie since the first Avengers movie, and I've been fully like, yeah, that would be great. I would love to see Black Widow kick some ass, and maybe said it in the past. Like, I think there's a lot of versatility there, and I think everybody's been echoing that for years. Every time we get, like, they announce more movies, everyone goes, "Where's the Black Widow movie?" And then all of a sudden they're like, "Whoa, Scarlett Johansson wants how much money to do a Black Widow movie?" I was like, okay, so you want the movie, but you think it's ridiculous that she's asking for this amount of money, even though she's been playing this character for so long. I think she's technically no longer contractually obligated to be in any more movies. And I was like, I feel like, well, that is like the dumbest thing I've ever seen. It's like, we've literally been wanting this for years, and we've been pushing for it, and then we're like, she goes, well, I want this amount of money. We go, whoa, wait. Are we being a little greedy here? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Not to mention, she's like one of the most bankable female stars.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
She
yes.
is Robert Downey Jr. for females, so why doesn't she get paid the same?
I mean,
absolutely.
Trust me, Lucy's plot seems stupid, but it made a bunch of money.
Yeah.
And it was actually fairly okay to watch. You just set a lot of the science bullshit aside.
I think Scarlett Johansson did the whole MCU franchise a big favor by, you know, being such a big star and taking, you know, I mean, you know, Black Widow's a great character, but in those movies she's basically just, you know, oh, we have to have one girl on the team, you know, like, I mean, it's like, so she's
they gave her really small and kind of crappy storylines. So the fact that she wants to continue this character and like really explore it actually with a movie where it wouldn't just be about like her reproductive system or her going like I know it's cringeworthy, but
I was so disappointed by that, by the way, because I mean, I'm a big Buffy fan, and I feel like Joss did some nice things for ladies in the Buffy universe, and to see him go backwards so much with her and the last Avengers movie was disappointing, to say the least.
That's a great point.
It is the #1 example of men's obliviousness, to be honest, because Joss Whedon, he probably thinks, oh, well, the little girls watching, like, they don't have to think about their, like, biology or being moms or crap like that. It's like, no, like, I was this is a lot of info, but I was diagnosed with PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome, at 12. So I was already at 12 talking about that and having doctors talk to me about, like, fertility and all of that. And so if I had been 12 watching a movie where the only female character's storyline is her fertility with Jeremy
Renner?
Is that him?
Ruffalo.
Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah, it was just like, I would have been devastated. At 12, I would have walked out of that movie, like, so angry. And it's crushing, because it's like, he probably genuinely thinks, oh, little girls aren't looking at that storyline. Like, that just goes over their head. Because most guys that age aren't thinking about that. Like, he probably is thinking of himself at 12, not females at 12. And it's a completely different thing. So I would have burned the theater down. If I was 12 and had to watch that movie with her, I would have died.
You know, it's an interesting point, because what you were talking about made me think of a really just, I mean, if you all want to disagree with this is fine, but I think there's a really awful line in Terminator 2 where Linda Hamilton is forced to say, like, you know, to Joe Morton's character, I think, like you can't imagine what it is to create life, to feel something growing inside you, and I always thought like that like sounded like kind of like a man's like idea of a feminist line, and it's the same thing with like something like Age of Ultron, like it's kind of like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I've said and written stupid stuff, so I may not be one to judge, but it is like almost embarrassing to see some of these male directors like think they're being feminist when it's just so clunky.
It is cringeworthy. And I did love Joss Whedon's Buffy, but his recent, I'm kind of over him. He's canceled to me. I'm just so tired of it. And he's one of those guys that acts like, I don't know, I think maybe he is of the generation of, feminism stuck in the 90s, because it is still kind of applicable for what he was doing in Buffy, but now I'm just you gotta move forward. Come on, buddy, come on, this is embarrassing.
You were progressive back then, you ain't anymore.
It's progressive in the 90s, it only continues to be progressive if you keep moving.
You have to progress.
Yeah.
To be progressive.
You were progressive, and then now you're stagnant.
Exactly.
Yeah, sorry. We totally are not talking about Wonder Woman.
Any more thoughts on Wonder Woman?
I love the strong side female characters. I love seeing Robin Wright be in general. Just a lot of extra women kicking ass.
Mandy, you were going to say something?
I have two things to say.
Please.
One, I was really sad we had to leave the female world.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I know you.
That was too
absolutely.
short.
I know.
I
want a home movie there.
Yeah, the Mascara movie. Yeah.
And then also I felt like Wonder Woman was very similar to the first Avenger, and I felt like Wonder Woman did it better.
I agree wholeheartedly.
So go Wonder Woman.
I don't know about that. But I'm also a huge Cap fan, so it's going to be hard to convince me of that one.
Well, you consider First Avenger and Wonder Woman, the origin stories, they have the random sidekicks that kind of play a part but don't really play a part in what's going on, and they kind of keep on going on. I don't know. I drew a lot of parallels between that one and First Avenger.
How could you not? Though
right.
they look. Yeah. I mean, that's the only reason they changed it from World War II to World War I.
Yeah, but I just kind of felt like Wonder Woman did it a slightly bit better. Mm-hmm. But I'm a huge Captain fan.
No, that's
and Winter Soldier's my favorite.
No,
Marvel.
I totally agree, and that's why I'm I probably shouldn't argue this because I feel like most of this is just going to come from my love of Captain America. But I will say, I did not cry when Steve Trevor died. I did almost tear up a little bit when Cap was like, "I'm going down," and they just pretend that they're going to have a date anyways. I was like, I can't do this. That was too hard. Though it was real great. My ex did not realize what Captain America's origin story was. She's like, wait, what? Wait, why is the plane going down? I was she got real freaked out. That was bullshit.
I'll say one thing about this debate. Honestly, I think Wonder Woman is the best superhero movie in about half a decade. Frankly,
Since The Dark Knight.
Since The Dark Knight Rises, yeah.
The Dark Knight Rises?
I love The Dark Knight Rises.
Since Winter Soldier.
Really?
Oh, yeah. No, I think
Yeah.
The Dark Knight Rises is a masterpiece. That's my favorite of the trilogy. I can tell you have feelings about that.
I do have feelings.
Hannah's gonna have some words for you later.
We'll have to talk, but I really felt with Patty Jenkins what I hadn't felt in a while, which was a real passionate understanding of a character from a director and a real belief. Even going back to her childhood, I get the sense from interviews and who that character is and what they stand for, but also an ambition to tell a story that is moving and alive and exciting, and it doesn't just distract you for 2 hours, but really rouses you. Well, Max, I happen to know that you're about to talk about one of the few movies that we're talking about today that I know literally nothing about.
Oh my!
Can you tell us about patty cakes?
Well, let me tell you about patty cakes. It's such a weird sentence to say out loud. Patty Cakes is a film about a young, I would say 19, 20, maybe I think she's 21, female, heavier set. She lives in New Jersey and not any of the good parts, which should really say something. It's a little, I don't know what the right word is. I don't know. She's definitely lower class. Like, she's, her grandmother had a hip surgery, who lives with her and her mom, that she works to help pay the bills. Her mom is borderline alcoholic. She works at a bar which her mom frequents to come get drunk and sing karaoke and get free drinks. Who's played by Bridget Everett, a comedian. I think she's mostly known for, she's on Lady Dynamite as one of Maria Bamford's friends. She's Dagmar.
Oh, I love her.
She's so good. And she's also, if you watch the Amy Schumer show, like at the end of every season, she's always on the last episode and you get to see some of her stand-up. She's hilarious. In this movie, she is not hilarious. She is sad. But the focal point is Patricia, or Patty Cakes as she gets called, or Killer P. Her dreams are to be a rapper. She uses rap as an escape. She idolizes a local rap hero named OZ. Her dream is to meet him, spit some bars, and get signed, and get the hell out of that town. And just, basically it's the dream of making $1 million and just getting out of that shithole town that you live in. But of course, she's got plenty of things working against her. She's white, which is not a easy thing to break into in the rap community. She's also a woman. Also just not good into breaking into most things, apparently. And on top of that, she's also overweight, which she is constantly reminded of by people calling her Dumbo. Dumbo Dembranowitz, I think is her last name, is Dembranowitz. So she's been called that since middle school, she brings up. So she's literally fighting against all of this to make these dreams come true. While constantly being worked against because of her skin tone, or her weight, or her gender. And it comes from all sides. Her mom constantly is is always telling her how beautiful she is, but tells her she shouldn't be rapping and she should act her race. Then she goes out with the African Americans who are saying the same thing, but also commenting on the fact that she's a woman. And then she goes out amongst other white rappers who, are rapping like in a group out in a parking lot, and they focus on the fact that she's a woman and overweight. So it's like she can never ever really, no one can ever look past all three things. It's always at least two, and she's constantly being reminded about it while fighting against it. And to mirror that, her mother had dreams of being a singer and was in a hair band and never worked out. So in a way their dreams are parallel, but it's like also kind of looking into the future about like what happens when you don't make it. And it's a really weird film. I'm still kind of processing it because I think the film overall is pretty mediocre. It throws out a lot of really big ideas, but what I really like about it is just her determination, but also finding out that what she's doing she's good at what she does, but also not really quite tapping into like the emotional core of it all, and she really figures out how to do that. But one of my favorite scenes is actually she has her side hustle, as she calls it. She works part-time for a catering company. She ends up at a bar mitzvah with a I can't remember, it was DJ Presson, I think was her name, but it's played by MC Light, like an actual female rapper from the game back in like the late 80s, early 90s. And she goes up afterward and she hands her mix and she goes, "I just want to say I love your radio show." And she goes, "But this is my mixtape. I'd really love you to listen to it. I think you're great." And she goes, "Oh, thanks." She goes, "I've been in the game for 20 years and here I am doing a bar mitzvah. So good luck to you, Killer P." But she takes the mix anyways, and she's the only one that does not tear her down or take away her dream. She just says good luck, but also kind of gives her that dose of reality, and not for anything other than it's a hard road. And I love it. I loved every bit of it, and it was actually the inspiration for this podcast. It came out about November. It kind of came and went, but I was also at that point I was really just I was at Florida. I was like, I have seen so many different roles for female characters in so many movies, from Wonder Woman to Colossal to fuck, I feel so bad. I'm, like, forgetting all of them. But The Handmaid's Tale, which is on TV, which is just a whole group of women, just blew my mind. I was like, this is such a great year for women, and so I had to pick Patty Cakes.
Well, you, talking about that, that scene, where she's, told, like, she's given a reality check, but, also, good luck. I mean, what's the takeaway from the movie? Is that, like, kind of the note it ends on ultimately, or is that the sense that, she, like, she can, like, triumph, maybe, or, what does it come down to, really?
I think it comes down to, I think she realizes what, she's trying to figure out what she needs from it and how she's going to use it as an escape. It feels a little bleak, actually, because you don't really kind of get any sense or hope that it's going to get better, just more that she's going to keep trying. And I think that maybe is the point. There is some silver lining at the end, I will give you that, but I won't spoil it.
Did either you, Mandy or Hanna, did you see Patty Cakes?
No, I've been meaning to, though.
So you're the only one that's seen it, and
Yeah.
we're all just listening to you.
I hate to be the voice of Patty Cakes.
No, this is awesome.
It's hard.
Well, I'll ask you one more question then.
Please.
I mean, did I hear you? Did you say that you think in some ways the movie's kind of mediocre?
Yeah, in some ways, because they tackle a lot of ideas.
So, I mean, is it just like the character and, that she's a compelling character who you sympathize with and root for, that you think makes this a,
she's a compelling character you're rooting for, but I was also just thinking, was like, I never would have imagined, I've always been very pro-women, I consider myself a feminist, but I can honestly say I couldn't imagine a movie like this being made. And I felt so just rejuvenated by that. I was like, the actress is actually Australian, but
Daniel McDonald. Right?
Yes, but she throws on the New Jersey accent, and she's really good. But also Bridget Everett, they pair so well together. And I was like, and again, we were just talking about how there's never enough rich side female characters, and Bridget Everett is really great, and she really toes that line, and I love the relationship between it, because you see her struggle, because it's her mom. She loves her mom, but her mom is an alcoholic. Her mom is sleeping with a man who's separated from someone else. She's just mean. She takes her money because apparently she can't do enough to help pay the bills, and it's a situation that's also pretty real. But I think they say the movie is mediocre, but only because it tackles a lot of ideas, and my mom actually has this saying. She goes about projects. She goes, "Just remember, kiss. Keep it simple, stupid." And then she goes, "It's just this idea." She goes, "Sometimes you can have this really great complex idea, but if you can't execute it, it's just garbage." She goes, "But if you take a simple idea and execute it perfectly, it always shines." And we were talking about Wonder Woman and how you're like, it's your fairly standard hero story. I was like, but they do it well.
Absolutely,
and I think sometimes, so I think this one kind of suffers from the complex ideas and questioning, but also it's gotten a lot of backlash for culture appropriation.
That's what I was going to ask about, is, like, did it address cultural appropriation? Because it is directed and written by a white man who also wrote all of the rap in the film. So I think that is kind of an interesting, like, perspective, that he is writing not only, rap music, and he's also writing a female character rapping. So that's kind of interesting.
I think he was a rapper, so I think that's where he gets. But I think he's also faced a lot of backlash. Don't quote me perfectly on that one, but it's good.
It's so hard for me to imagine him as a rapper. Oh gosh, my IMDb app keeps crashing. Based on his IMDb picture, he looks like an old Dutch man. Like,
I think there's a lot, especially I think what also really drew me to this is, I do like rap music, but I think there's also a lot of change and questions about cultural appropriation in rap music. We got the Iggy Azaleas, the Macklemores, the I can't even think of any, the white Lil Dickies. And that, I mean, that there are people out there that are trying to, and what that...
He's not as old as I thought he looked. He's not as old as I thought he was. He's still...
So I think that does play... I think a lot of people have put into question the fact that she's still white, and that she still does take a lot of... She has a lot of white privilege in it. Like, she doesn't take no for answers, or as an answer at one point. She just kind of... just assume she's gonna get it. I didn't really view it that way, but I also like to see the good and maybe the intentions of people. And I think I just saw her as a struggling character in fighting against these things that she can't help, but she wants to do. And I think people do question, like, is it her place? Or can you join the culture? They bring up the phrase culture vulture. And that's just... well, it's in regards to people who are culturally appropriating.
Sure.
It's, you are a culture vulture. It's, you are here for the culture, but you're not participating or adding to it.
So I haven't seen it. I would, if I do want to see it, and I have a lot of questions about, like, how they handle cultural appropriation in the film, because I think that that's really important. But... I did have a question for you. When it's so weird that I keep bringing up Iceland, but when I was in Iceland, that was July 2017. It was being plugged constantly. It was all over Iceland's TV. It was constantly being plugged on the BBC. On every hotel I was in, I drove around the entire country. Every single one, I saw commercials for this movie and commercials for events for this movie, and I saw nothing like that here. And I actually didn't even realize it came out in November. Like I said, I saw the previews July 2017, and you're telling me it came out in November.
Yeah, fall.
So why do you think that it was such a big deal or had a lot more visibility in other countries than it did here? Because I didn't see that much.
No.
Just regularly. Granted, I don't have TV, so maybe I'm not...
I got a thought about this, actually.
Yeah, please.
I mean, I did not see any advertisement for it either, actually. I mean, I think I maybe saw one poster at Cinema 21, which, and yet, like, I kept hearing that it was a crowd pleaser, that it was a big deal at, whichever festival it was at. Like, I mean, I almost wonder if it's largely just a marketing issue. Like, I don't know who distributed it, but maybe they were sleeping at the wheel.
It's kind of a wild story, and I feel like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a comparison, and maybe one of you guys can hear, like, I feel like sometimes there are stories that are done in America that feel larger than life and seem way more popular overseas because it looks like America just exaggerated, and in their eyes it's just like, oh, that's so crazy, or like it makes us look bad in a way. They're just like, oh, that's totally America, like just done to an extreme,
like Jersey Shore.
Exactly. Like they see things like Jersey Shore, or I wish I could think of something else. Like,
well, I have been asked about Jersey Shore in my travels in Europe more than anything else.
Yeah.
I have been asked in Italy, in France, in London. I had complete strangers that I was just chatting with bring up Jersey Shore. It's appalling.
So you're saying if I travel overseas, make sure I watch Jersey Shore
yes.
so I can answer your question?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
you
I
need
have
to
nothing
know
to
who
talk
he
to.
is.
But I think it's partly that. There's an Australian actress as the lead, and that might be another reason why it might be promoted better internationally, because they can...
He's from New Jersey, though.
Which
is weird. I just looked that up. I didn't know that.
No, I love that you're having all these facts about the director, because I did not look into him at all. I was just taking the characters. But I think, I don't know, that is really strange, and I don't even remember how I happened to find it.
One thing is, and this is kind of a strange stretch, but it seems like plus-size white blondes, just as a generalization, seem to reach success in Europe and Australia very early. Like, if you look at the Rebel Wilsons, and you look at these kind of outspoken Australian, like, we allow those types of women more so, it seems like we accept them more when it's comedy, of course, Melissa McCarthy, Rebel Wilson, etc., and when it's foreign. I don't know, when it's not an American-centric person. So even though she's playing a New Jersey person. I don't know if that's why it was pushed a lot harder in Europe, in Australia, on the BBC, because they were having events. Like, I'm not even joking.
Like big things?
In the parks,
Oh
and
my gosh.
in projected on old, big famous
That's
buildings
so
in London,
weird.
and you could bring a picnic and watch it. It was very strange. So I don't know if that has to do with it, like what we accept and what we like, because we're very selective in what roles we allow kind of plus size women.
No, I think that's definitely,
TV
that's a huge factor. I remember watching the Graham Norton show, and I stumbled across this comedian named Miranda Hart, and I think
I love Miranda
Hart
Hart.
is beautiful. But I think she did like a radio. She was just like funny on radio, and then like just one thing after another. She ended up with her own show called Miranda,
Which is brilliant. If you haven't watched it, watch it.
It's on Hulu.
Yes.
And it's so funny. But for a while she did that, and then from there she actually went and did Call the Midwife.
Mm-hmm.
And then she also had a role in Spy, which again, she was playing
a big
funny.
breakthrough.
That was a huge.
And
it was.
Now I remember her. Now I know what you're talking
Now you know
about.
exactly. Like up until that point, and see, and
she
that's
was hilarious in Spy.
and that's basically how America reacted.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, like she was already really famous in
Yes.
England, and then Spy comes around, and everyone's like, "Oh, she's funny. Who is she?" And I think everyone's really also keen to go give a comedic actor a dramatic role, because everyone says drama's easy, comedy's hard.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's at least a mentality that can go, oh, we're going to have her headline her own show, be the main character, be hilarious, but now we're also going to give her a serious role. Like, I think they do give them more wiggle room. Mm-hmm. Sure, I think they need to start in comedy, but I think it wouldn't be surprising to see Rebel Wilson get a small indie role outside in a foreign country that's dramatic.
Yeah.
And I think she could do it too.
Mm-hmm.
I think here in America it's like, well, you're either fat and funny or like skinny in the bombshell. Like that's just like the only way it gets to be. And I think there are people who are challenging that. But I think the problem is you have to become a bankable star first.
And I do think Miranda Hart is a perfect example of having more opportunities in Europe for harder, more, challenging roles.
Yeah.
Because Call the Midwife, she's incredible. And she is like her and Kate McKinnon are my two favorite, like they are my Carol Burnett's for this generation.
Oh my
like
goodness.
They are everything.
I just found mine and Hannah's like connected.
I know,
points.
we found it! This is us forever! This is us forever! Oh my gosh.
No, but I think it's very true, and it's a shame.
Mm-hmm.
But
I'm so glad you brought up this movie.
Yeah, it's and I mean, but then a great example, Bridget Everett, a heavier set actress, but she does a great job in this role, and it's a little funny, but it's hard to make alcoholism funny.
I'm interested to see it because she is hilarious.
She is hilarious, and she's so good, and she sings in this too a little bit,
Okay.
and she's got a great singing voice. And there's that great mother-daughter relationship too to go with that, and then also bring in Nana, who lives with them as well. She always goes, "Give me a limmy," because to her, like her rap is just limericks. She's constantly chain smoking. She goes, "I need a Percocet." Patty Cakes is just like rolling her around in a wheelchair through a graveyard. The situations are like absurd, but at the same time they're very serious. Like I loved it. I would recommend it, and go watch it. Good luck though. In Portland, I think Movie Madness owns one copy. But if you have Amazon Prime, you can rent it on there for $4 or $5.
Check Clinton Street Video.
Clinton Street Video also. Do not check out Great American Video. They don't have it.
Impulse Video might.
There you go. Plug all our local video shops.
Impulse has all of those. They even have VHSs.
That's
really?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I'll need to check out Impulse. But yeah, find a way to see it if you can. Check out the trailer. That'll give you a good idea what you're kind of getting into. But yeah, I can't really comment on the whole cultural appropriation thing. What you questioned that a while back. Because again, I have a very like rose-colored view of the world. I view all art as accessible to everyone. And apparently, not everybody thinks that. I was like, hey, if you want to rap and you're good, who cares? Go for it. But that's not how the world works. Some people don't like that. There's just some things you can't do, I guess. But
Well, I'm gonna check it out. I think
Yeah.
I think it sounds really intriguing.
So yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Mandy, I know you've got a movie to talk about that I think is going to be a really fascinating one to delve into. Do you want to tell us about Lady Macbeth?
So I did Lady Macbeth, and nothing to do with Shakespeare. It's actually based off of a Russian novella.
Oh.
Yes. And Lady Macbeth is follows the story of a woman named Catherine, and she gets kind of sold into marriage by her parents to these oppressive men. So she lives with her father-in-law and her husband now, and they're awful, emotionally abusive. So emotionally abusive and very demanding. And anyway, Catherine decides to take things into her own hands, and murder ensues. Oh. And I chose this movie for a couple of reasons. There's a lot of think pieces online whether this constitutes as a feminist film or not. I think it does, and I'm going to list why. This is a period piece. I find, unless it's a Bronte or an Austen, period pieces don't typically tend to have strong females in them, and Catherine is nothing but a very, very strong female. And you see that throughout the film. She does end up murdering in order to create her own destiny. And yes, maybe it goes a little far by the end of the film, but you do not doubt her tenacity. And I really, really enjoy that. Even to her darkest moments, I was Team Catherine. The other side of it is the secondary female character in this film is mostly female, is Anna, which is her black servant. And there's actually a lot of African Americans in this film, which is also very rare for a period piece.
Yeah.
And this is a commentary on feminism and the black population that I don't think gets a lot of attention. So Anna, unlike Catherine, who by the end of this film wins, Anna suffers. And I think it's a commentary on how feminism is wonderful and it's great, but a lot of times it's losing people because it's not really looking at some of the other aspects, and that is race and class. And so there's a lot of people starting to leave the feminism because of they don't feel like they're not the targets, and a lot of that is, minorities. And Catherine wins because she steps on Anna, and she allows Anna to go down for her rise. And I think that has a lot to say about feminism.
That's a huge commentary.
Yes, and it's such a small, it's like an hour and a half film, there's sparse dialogue. I don't think there's any music until maybe the last third of the film, and it's used very, very well. So yeah, for such a small film, it was made on like a shoestring budget, it has a lot to say.
Wow.
So I know, I really liked it. But I see the reasons why people wouldn't consider it a feminist, picture, but I do.
What do you think about like the way this movie, which I reviewed actually for a week way back?
Oh, no way!
Yeah, so I got to see it for free, guys. What do you think about the way that it kind of evolves? Because I felt like the same way as you. I felt like, Team Catherine, like, when she, murders her father-in-law with poisoned mushrooms, I was like, yes! When she, like, beats her husband, I can't remember, with, like, a plank or something.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, like, about damn time. But it's like, it kind of, like, I feel like the movie kind of, like, toys with your sympathies a bit, because it's like, it's about her, like, rising up, against these evil patriarchal forces, and then, like, in the end, like, she's almost like the authoritarian force, condemning these black characters. And I just wondered if you had any thoughts, because that's quite a like a transformation, like the way the movie like kind of like twists your emotions one way and then twists them another. Like,
yeah, I know. I mean, Catherine definitely becomes a bit of a psychopath, you realize, about halfway through. And I think that's why I like it so much, is she does have to step on all of these black characters, and it shows you white privilege is a thing, whether you're a man or a woman. And yes, feminism is important, and we want white women to rise, but we can't let them rise at the at the expense of everyone else. And Catherine becomes a bit power hungry. She continues to kill for reasons where she really probably doesn't need to. I feel like she's doing it because she doesn't see any other way out as a woman. But at the same time, the only reason she wins is because she lets her fellow black servant. Not her fellow. But she lets the black people in her life take the fall. So, does that kind of...
No, absolutely.
Okay.
But I think, I mean, it's really interesting, and I think you were alluding to this just now. I mean, it's really horrifying what she does, but at the same time you understand, because, I mean, it's so awful what you see her go through in the beginning. I mean, it's just so dehumanizing the way she's treated, and, I mean, yes, it's, like, repugnant, the things she ultimately does, but then it's like, well, I mean, who wouldn't make those choices, I mean, it's like, I mean, she had enough, and I mean, she is what this horrible system in these circumstances made her.
And I felt very conflicted because I was like, "Go, Catherine!"
Right.
Even at the worst moments, I was like, "Well, not cool, Catherine, but okay." And then at the end, but also by the end, the other characters I was like kind of heartbroken, but still cheering, but heartbroken for everyone else that's involved in Catherine's story.
Well, and I think it's unfair to go, is this a feminist piece? I think it's actually more of a feminist piece, because then you can go, I think we're looking at not just like what good feminism can do, but also how feminism can be detrimental, and I think that's actually more important to talk about.
I don't think it's necessarily about how feminism can be
not that it's
detrimental,
but how it's non-inclusive.
Well, and I think it's about it's about really presenting a nuanced character. A character, you love her sometimes, you hate her sometimes, and it's like, I mean, that I think is kind of radical in and of itself, because it just seems like, the Hollywood Playbook 101 is that, women, they're either angels or they're devils,
Or if they're devils, you have to, be okay with everything they're doing.
Yeah. Or want to sleep with them.
Oh.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
No, I see what you mean, though. Like, it's it's nuances representation of feminism. Mm. Like, it can, if we don't watch feminism, it can
spiral out of control.
Yeah.
Or people can be left, be excluded, who should technically be under the same umbrella.
Yeah, as wonderful as it is, there are people leaving it for very good reasons.
Yes.
Well, and you're also allowed to say, this is an imperfect character, and there's power in that. You're able to say, she has all of these, negative things, and, darkness to her, but there's power in even just having a female character that we allow to get that dark. Mm-hmm. But part of that darkness is white feminism and not being intersectional, and there's importance and value in both of those things. She can still be, a survivor of this thing and these awful things and be in charge of her own kind of triumph while also undercutting. And that's a kind of first of all, I love the movies you brought. I'm so excited. But I just think that that's something that we don't catch in film ever. And they're either, like you said, they're either the hero or they're, the whore, basically, or whatever the opposite would be in the context. But we never talk about, white feminism and how damaging it can be, and how, in a sense, white feminism isn't feminism. Because if your feminism only affects white women of a certain socioeconomic class, then you're just mad about stuff.
Yeah.
Because you're not actually helping women, you're helping yourself. And so I think the fact that you are bringing up all these things, and this is the conversation that it's starting, and she can still be, somebody you're rooting for at times, but be somebody that you also are no. No. That has power, because even just asking those questions, we haven't got that opportunity in a lot of films about women or starring women. So that's really exciting.
And I think a lot of it too is people are scared to say anything negative about feminism. Mm-hmm. And that's, that's fine. But if we want to have these discussions, we kind of have to start bringing out some of the ugly sides of things.
Well, and you can't be a feminist if you're not looking at it intersectionally.
Yes.
You can't be a feminist if your feminism doesn't include women of color, trans women, LGBT. It's not feminism then. So I think that there is that. There's this fear of oh, well, we don't want to say, critique this, but it's well, no, feminism isn't that it's untouchable. It's that you critique it with the same respect that you do for a film about a man. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I have to see this. Oh. I'm terrified for both of these movies. Thank you. But I have to see it.
I think you'll really enjoy it.
Okay.
It's also really beautifully shot too.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a lot to like feast on filmically. Like,
It's all set in one location, which is like, I totally love those films.
Oh, that's so
yeah,
good.
yeah.
Yeah, one location, I'm all in.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Well,
So that was Lady Macbeth.
it has nothing to do with Lady Macbeth.
All right. Well, I got a movie to talk about. This is a documentary called Dolores, which it's about the inventor of the phrase "Yes, we can," but it's not about Barack Obama. It's about the woman who inspired him to take up that rallying cry, Dolores Huerta. I didn't know anything about her before I saw this movie, I'm ashamed to say, but she was a Latina activist. She fought alongside Cesar Chavez to secure rights for exploited farm workers. She went through so many extraordinary things. You know, she fought against abusive grape growers at a peaceful protest in the 1980s. She was beaten so badly by police that she had to have her spleen removed. And she kept going. You know, nothing could keep her down. And what I really like about this movie is it really takes a very comprehensive, clear-headed approach to her life. You know, it's a standard talking heads documentary. I know a lot of people are sick of that kind of thing. You know, I'm a sucker for the whole, PBS. Like,
I am too.
It's so great, right?
Mm-hmm.
They talk to people who worked with her. They talk to her children, who they're fascinating to hear from because they talk about kind of the pain of being the children of a woman who had this higher calling that took her away from them a lot. But at the same time, they kind of have this attitude of like, yep, job needed to be done, and it's really quite a thing to see. And I also appreciate how this movie, takes a really nuanced look at her life in a feminist way, kind of like Lady Macbeth actually, but in a very different arena. It shows like the evolution of Dolores Huerta's feminism, like how she started out as being a pro-life woman, but then got involved with Gloria Steinem, became more of a feminist, ultimately became pro-choice. It shows how, she had, she was this great leader, and she had, so many allies that she depended upon to, create this movement. But at the same time, the movie explores how she was dealing with sexism among her own allies. So she had to fight alongside these people, but at the same time be brave enough to call them out and, say, hey, you're part of the problem. And it's just it's a really powerful and inspiring film to see, and it's kind of bittersweet because it brings her right up it comes right up to the Trump election a little bit beyond, and she's 87 years old. She's still fighting.
That hurts me.
I know. She's still fighting for progressive causes. So it's kind of it's kind of sad that wow, she dealt with Nixon. She dealt with Reagan. Now she has to deal with, Trump of all people.
Her work is never done.
Yeah, it's like, when can she get a break? But at the same time, she's still going, and it's like, wow, she got the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Obama, obviously, not President Trump.
I think that's the least she could do for stealing her catchphrase.
Trump was too busy trying to give one to Frederick Douglass.
Frederick Douglass is someone who's been doing very great work.
Oh my god.
Non-stop embarrassment.
Well, and I think what you just brought up is really interesting because we live in this kind of liberal white bubble of comfort.
Yes.
And so this woman, it would be the first one to tell you, this isn't new. We're all shocked. Everyone's all shocked. And I mean, granted, this is very extreme, but in a way, it's not anything she hasn't seen before. This is the same cycle that we as a country keep living in and then keep acting like it's new every time.
Yeah.
And she's kind of this living, proof that none of this is new, and it's all been a part of our country the entire time.
Absolutely. And I mean, she was Cesar Chavez is the one, people always talk about, when they look back on, the period of history, when, so much of this was going on, and he's, an incredibly important, figure in American history. But I mean, just the fact that I had heard of him and never heard of her, and she has, outlived him by a long shot, and was doing this same work, and
is still doing this work.
Yeah, and was muscled out of the organization that she helped build after Chavez died, pretty much just because she was a woman. Her own allies, weren't even grateful enough to keep her on. It's just you're right. I mean, it's all this stuff. In a way, it is nothing that we haven't seen before. It's shocking, but at the same time, it's same old, which is, horrible, but true.
I'm more flabbergasted. I'm just thinking of the frustration of having to go, we're fighting for the same thing. You guys need to stop right now. You're hurting. This is still bad. We're going to talk about this later after we get all this sorted out. That sounds so infuriating. I can't imagine it. To have, a whole team of people that you still have to fight with amongst yourself.
It's the same thing as having black troops in war, fighting for the Civil War in World War I and World War II, and then coming back and being treated like crap, there is this, level of, what we were talking about earlier, but, I mean, white feminism, and, even now, white women who are viewed very strongly as feminism in our society are doing things that undercut black women. So it's black women think that we're fighting for the same thing, but in reality, we're undercutting that all the time. Yeah. So, speaking of not knowing this woman's name and not feeling educated, everyone should read Wonder Women, 25 Innovators, Inventors, and Trailblazers Who Changed History, because this book is literally every woman that you should have had in your history books. I was reading this, it's awesome. Scientists, artists, writers. I was reading this and I was like, how is this something, how have we not how is this? Yeah. How have we heard of Cesar Chavez and we haven't, this woman who's still alive, Dolores, I don't know her.
I've never heard of her, yeah.
That's devastating.
Absolutely.
So check out that book. It is, I gave it to everybody for Christmas. It was here's your history lesson, Merry Christmas.
The gift of knowledge.
Yes. That's great.
It's incredible, but it just shows how much self-educating we have to do in our society, because we need to know this woman's work, and we need to know her name, and we need to know her fight, because that's also the knowledge of this isn't new. This is something that we're need to finally stop this cycle of racism and inequality. So anyway, that was my little speech.
No, but I know what you mean. Yes. I always, I thought for a long time, I had, really comprehensive history education. I learned so much. Woo! I read Howard Zinn. I'm so special.
So accurate.
But it's it's just talking about this now. It's wow, you're right. We do have to self-educate, because it's even when I think back, even the classes I took that were supposedly really open-minded and opening your eyes, it's wow, there's some pretty damn big gaping holes.
Well, and do you know how much work I had to do, even at Portland State, which is one of the most liberal colleges, to get classes that were inclusive? I couldn't just take a literature. I couldn't just take any old class. I had to find African American lit, lesbian lit. I had to go out and find and be really active about this. And that's even at, that, and I'm still lucky because I'm at a college that has that. It's so much effort on our part, but it is the only way to not have another Me Too generation. It's the only way not to have these generations continue, and we don't know our own history, which is why everyone thinks this is new, and why everyone thinks this is, surprising. No person of color is surprised. It's been a year, white people, come on. let's get it going. You're still shocked. I am too at times. Yeah. I'm the same way. He'll do something and I'm like, how is this real? How is this not the Twilight Zone? And then I'm like, oh, okay. Well, this is just other people's lives, whether he's a president or not.
It's like that SNL skit with Chris Rock, basically.
I was thinking about that one quite a bit.
Yeah.
No.
I want to address a question that I think all of our listeners have probably had. I'm sure a bunch of people have been thinking, what the fuck is going on? Why, Ben? Why did you skip over Hanna?
Why haven't I heard from Hanna
yet? It's actually part of the plan. Hanna has 2 movies to tell us about, so Hanna,
I do.
please take it away.
Thank you, but now that I argued to do both mine at the same time, it's really intense. So
have fun. This is a lot of commentary.
Hanna, talk now.
Pressure's on.
Spotlight. No, I'm gonna sit back. I'm going to slouch.
Please educate us.
Yeah.
No. So the 2 movies I'm going to talk about are Lady Bird and Mr. Roosevelt, which we've talked about Lady Bird before. Greta Gerwig, amazing. I'll go into that. Mr. Roosevelt premiered at South by Southwest, which, true, I think? You might not know.
I don't know.
I think it did, which is funny because they talk about South by Southwest in the movie.
You're right. Yeah.
And kind of yeah.
Meta moment.
But it was written and directed and starred Noelle Wells. And so I wanted to do 2 movies that are both directed by women because that's so rare, and the fact that I can even talk about 2 movies coming out in the same year that are both really amazing and done by women is kind of amazing.
And we've had 4 or 5 now.
I know.
That's pretty good.
Gosh, I'm so excited for The Wrinkle in Time.
Oh, yeah.
So, I'm going to start with a quote from Mr. Roosevelt because I kind of feel like both of these movies, it's hard because there's so much to talk about with both of them, but I kind of feel like both of these movies are victims of the good guy undercut. I've read so many things and seen so many things, and the way they're talked about in award shows and the way they're talked about in general, there are a lot of people giving mad respect to Lady Bird, and I do acknowledge that because it's amazing. But there's a lot of people who, subtly kind of undercut these things as lesser films. Also, side note, do you know only one film we've talked about today is over 2 hours in running time? And that was Wonder Woman. None of the other ones even came close to 2 hours, and the majority are sitting at about 1 hour and 30 minutes, which I think is really interesting for budget and all of that.
Yeah. And I never even thought of thinking about it that way, but that's so true. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's the perfect runtime. But
I agree.
Yeah.
I don't like these long movies, but
No.
we give
Oh.
Zack Snyder hours. We
So
give
what
these
you're-
Yeah,
people
that's true.
hours.
Yeah.
See, I thought the comment you were making was that we aren't giving women enough
That's
time to
true.
tell their stories, but are you saying women can just manage to tell the story in a decent amount of time? We can do this in 1 hour and a half.
Maybe I'm
we
saying
don't need it
both.
2.5 hours.
Maybe I'm saying both.
Oh.
I'm saying I do think we give less budgets and we don't give them enough time to tell their stories at times. But I also think, we give these male directors obscenely long budgets and extremely large budgets, and they make 3-hour movies that just go on and have no substance, and it's devastating. But anyway, I thought that was really interesting. Wonder Woman is sitting at 2 hours and 21 minutes, and everything else is about the hour 30.
Yeah.
So, anyway, in this movie, Emily, I'll go into kind of the plot later, but Emily is sitting at this watering hole, smoking weed with this guy. And this guy says, basically, that in regards to her creativity, she has this quirky vibe going on. So then she says, "Oh, Jesus, that is so condescending." And he goes, "It's a compliment," which if I have to be told that it's a compliment one more time on the things that men say to me, I'm going to scream. I literally had a guy, leave me an obscene comment online, and then another guy under it, when I said that's inappropriate, please don't send me a picture of your dick, wrote, "Don't you get it's a compliment?" I was just oh my god.
Oh.
But he's, of course, educating her and telling her it's a compliment to be called quirky. And then she responds, "No, it's not. You would never call a guy that. With a guy, you would use another word like eccentric. But with a girl, you need a word that recognizes her uniqueness, but at the same time devalues her intelligence. It's like her delightful whimsy can never make a cognate argument highlighting your unconscious sexism." So I think one, just being called quirky in general is not necessarily a bad thing, but it was directly in regards to her creativity and her craft of comedy. And when you're looking at her passion and what she does and you're undercutting that, I kind of felt like in that moment, Noelle Wells was talking to the audience and talking to critics and talking to people who perpetuate this idea like, oh, it's a cute movie. Like, it's cute. I get it. Like, it's cute. Like, the characters are relatable. It's cute. I've heard that so often about both of these movies, about how cute it is. And I'm like, holy shit. These movies are incredible, and they have complex characters that aren't cute. Like, this girl is not cute. Like, she wears cute clothes. I totally dig the fashion. I totally dig the style. She is a wreck. Like, have you seen Mr. Roosevelt?
I actually just saw it right before I showed up.
Oh my god. She's messy, and she is lost, and she kind of feels like she's failing, and she's in between two worlds. Her comedy is not quirky. And so I think I've read these reviews, and I think it's that we're willing to give movies like Lady Bird to an extent of praise. Like, this movie has a 99% Rotten Tomatoes score, and I've talked about this before, but she still didn't get a director nom. It's like we're able to kind of, to a level, call out these movies and say how awesome they are and say how incredible they are. But there's a cap to what we're willing to do. And so I think that both of these movies, her saying that, it felt like she was talking directly to the audience and directly to the people who write think pieces about this movie on BuzzFeed and all of these sites. There's so many now. And so I loved that quote and I loved that moment. And I think that both of these films, sorry, I lost my place. They both are just centered, they're both centered around the character. So both Lady Bird and Mr. Roosevelt, they have romantic relationships, they have friendships, they have these things kind of come in and out, but these two women are still the focal point. And you'll know that because it's so much biased towards their perspective. Like Lady Bird and Emily, you're seeing the relationship. You never see the relationship on screen. You never see her and him on screen. You only see it in pictures. And you never see Mr. Roosevelt on screen. You only see him in pictures and then once when he's dead with his tail, which was sad. But
we should mention that Mr. Roosevelt is a cat.
He is a cat.
Oh, okay. I still don't even know what this movie's technically about.
See, because I walked into the movie not knowing anything about what it was about, and I was like, what? He's a cat?
So she's a comic in LA and trying to make it in comedy. She's not a stand-up comic. The actress herself has been on SNL.
Yes.
And she gets a call that the cat that she left with her boyfriend, who is now her ex-boyfriend, is dying. And she flies back to Austin, only to discover at the vet that he is now living with a new girl in their house.
Oh.
And it's been like 2 years. It's kind of her fault too. No one is perfect. But it's really awkward. And then she goes and stays with them at their old house. This movie is the most... I have never cringed so much in, like, just a normal comedy. Like, it's not, like...
You started this out, like, describing it as, like, oh, my life's a mess. I'm like, oh, I've been there. But then you're like, oh, goes back to the ex with their new person. I'm like, oh my god, I haven't even had nightmares that creative.
No.
That sounds awful.
It is awful. And the girl is awful.
And yeah, she's a villain.
Celeste.
I hated her, yeah.
She's not a villain, though, and I'll talk about that.
Okay.
She is so cringeworthy, and they're all that, like, perfect, perfect, like, everything looks amazing and was meant, they call her a walking Pinterest. Like,
oh, yeah.
She's just perfectly put together, and you can never really tell her. It shows a lot about, like, perception and what you're perceiving in kind of these female dynamics. We oftentimes have these passive-aggressive dynamics in films, and in this, I really liked how, one, she says, like, she's crying in the bathroom. I'm so jumping around, I don't even care. She's crying in the bathroom, and she says, like, and she thinks it's her cat, and I kind of agree, like, I see her point, it is kind of her cat. Like, she does see Celeste, and it's kind of like this, how do you see this person that you hate as a human? And it culminates in them eventually basically breaking bread together. So I don't think she's a villain, but she is cringy. but you never see her perspective. And so that's what I was saying is Lady Bird in this, you see these really flawed outside characters only from these very strong perspectives. Like the mother in Lady Bird, Celeste in this, it's just through the eyes of these women, Emily and Lady Bird. But what were you going to say?
Oh, I guess I thought, like, I kind of, like, I mean, there's, I can't, oh, it's her, Emily's friend, Jen.
Jen?
Jen?
Okay,
yeah.
You just saw it. Tiebreaker, Jane or Jen?
I think it was Jane.
Jane?
Oh, God.
Jen.
Oh, I think it's
Jane.
Jen. I think it's Jen. I thought,
Three-letter
like...
J word.
That's a whole man.
Like, I was, like, so, like, and a lot of, I mean, Mr. Roosevelt deals with such, like, things I think really, like, apply so, like, profoundly to the millennial generation, just, like, you know, her, like, trying to figure out her life. Like, I guess I was, like, really struck by, I guess the reason, like, why I was, like, so, like, annoyed with Celeste, it's like, you know, like, oh, she's, like, asking Emily all these questions about, like, her work and what she wants to do. It's like, doesn't she know that's, like, putting her feet to the fire? Because it's like,
yeah.
There's, oh my god. But I see your point. I mean, you know, I think in the end it does seem that Celeste really is, like, trying to help her, and it's just kind of gone awry. Like.
Well, and I've watched it twice. And
Okay.
I had that reaction the first time. I just hated Celeste. And then the second time I watched it, I did kind of see kind of the dynamic as it progressed of how she was passive-aggressive at that dinner, but how it kind of, you're viewing it from one person's perspective. You're not really sure what her intentions are. But at the end, you see that they're more pure than you thought. And
Sure.
I think that that's a really interesting concept because we're so trained to, like, assume the worst and then be surprised by the best, as opposed to just being like, I think she's trying to be mean, and then realizing, like, no, she's really just not my, like, I shouldn't be friends with her, like, she's not my type of person, but she really had better intentions than it came on.
Sure.
Well, and then that also comes back to, like, she's not just a villain or a hero, sometimes they're a weird sliding scale, or perception.
Exactly.
So I think I like saw Celeste very differently than you guys. Like, I really liked Celeste throughout the first watch. I was like, she's being so nice to this woman who's coming back into the house and probably has feelings for her now boyfriend. But she was nothing but gracious the whole time. If anything, I thought, was it Megan? Is that her name?
Emily. Yeah.
The Noelle Wells character. Yeah. Emily was just being so mean.
See, and I agree with that too. Like, I was watching Celeste and I was like, how are you so cool? Like, they're on the bed together and Celeste is like, I didn't mean to interrupt. And I was like, I would be like, so I'm standing in here now.
Yeah.
Since this is where we are, this is where I will be. I'm petty like that.
If anything, Celeste was a little too accommodating. And like, the dinner was the one time I was kind of like, Celeste, I think you're pushing your boundaries a bit. But at the same time, I think she just has a thing of wanting to fix people. Like, that's what she did with him. Now she wants to fix his ex.
Yeah.
It comes from a good place. And that's kind of how I read it. And, you know, Emily was never very kind. It was never very giving to Celeste. And I think Celeste had a lot of patience with her.
I think that's a great character that I've seen repeated a few times with Lady Bird and Patty Cakes. I saw a lot of correlation between Patty Cakes, the mother-daughter dynamic, with the Lady Bird mother-daughter dynamic. Two very different worlds. But these characters of people who mean well, but come off, in our eyes, as the bad guy.
Or they mean well, like you said, it comes from a place of care, but it is actually damaging.
Yeah.
Like, that's a concept that's hard to see. Because I kind of thought Celeste, the music thing, was too much. Like, I was like, that's damaging because he needs to still be him, just, you know, a healthier version of him.
The thing where she's like, you know, having him keep his music out in the garage.
In the garage. Yeah. And so I think that that's, like, it's important, like, perception and how women are taught to perceive each other, and how you had this completely different experience than I did both times that I watched it. Because even though I did like Celeste a little more the second time, or I saw her place, like, I still wanted to punch her in the face. Like, when they're like, I flew in these pecans from Georgia.
It was ridiculous, and I was so glad Emily, like, tore them down.
And
That's hilarious. Yeah, I love that
the
part.
mimosa glass down. I was like, yes. I mean, she was also on a lot of Klonopin, but she threw it down and I was there for it. But it's just, this movie, I just won, like, I was so, this is gonna be weird, but I was so taken aback about bodies in this movie and makeup and how, like, it wasn't this perfect, like, it wasn't this, she wasn't so Hollywood, like, she wasn't that LA kind of perfection, and, like, even just all of the topless women, like, being all these different body shapes, I was like, yes, boobs, like, I was so
Can you
there for
just
it.
describe that scene?
Yeah, I was like, what are you saying yes, boobs to? I mean, I am pro-boob, but...
This is a pretty crucial scene, and a big part of what makes this movie so unique from, you know, other movies like this.
So, it's basically the scene where I read that quote from. They're all at this watering hole together. She's with one guy who comes in and out, and my face blindness kicked in at that point. I didn't realize that the guy from the watering hole was the guy in the truck.
Oh.
And I was like, she just went in that guy's truck? Like,
well, the guy, in your defense, that guy is really indistinguishable.
Yeah, thank you.
He looks almost like 1,000 different Portland guys, you know, I mean, the whole...
But she's there with a bunch of her mutual friends, and it's Austin, so you can go topless, and they all just start taking off their bikini tops, and she's really self-conscious, which, you know, whatever you're comfortable with, but, like, there was, like, a plus-size black bald woman that was topless. And I was, like, so excited. First of all, her bathing suit was adorable. I think I have it. I think it was from Torrid. Second of all, like, just seeing women of different sizes and seeing this actress, like, even when she got naked, it wasn't, like, perfect lighting. Like, she had a stomach a little bit, and she had, like, it wasn't, like, all this perfect, like, makeup. At times, she wasn't even wearing makeup. Like, I was so blown away by how, like, real and raw this movie was, and how it devastated me that it stood out that she didn't look perfect.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I was like, wow, like, she's, like, she's gorgeous. She is, like, very skinny, but, like, you still don't even see that kind of skinny. Yeah. You see, like, Photoshop perfect, like, rock hard ab, but for female version, where it's no abs, it's just nothing. And she had, like, a body. I was like, holy shit! I was really excited about all the boobs.
No, I always think it's funny whenever I'm watching someone like Hollywood, I'm like, wow, look at them. They're aging. like, they're not fighting it, they're just letting it happen normal. That's so weird. Like,
I know.
Like, I'm doing the same thing too. Why do I don't think that's weird, but for celebrities it's weird.
When it's not just like this constant, like, how do I make myself look as young as humanly possible? You notice it. And this was one of those situations where I was like, wow, I've never seen, like, a plus size woman topless that it wasn't like her dead on a table in,
or
like
a joke.
Thing.
Yeah,
joke. Or as a joke. Yeah, I was like, holy shit! I was so excited. And I was like, Mitch, look at all the boobs. They look like normal boobs. It was crazy, but I can't believe I just talked about boobs. I'm a feminist. I'm an intersectional feminist on a feminist podcast, and I spent 20 minutes talking about their tits, which I'm all for.
Hey,
sex positivity.
Yes,
tits for a good cause.
Yes.
They were used, like, smartly? I can't think of the right word.
I don't know, but it also wasn't sexualized. There was a lot of close-ups when she was like, oh, like looking around, very uncomfortable, because she didn't know that it was going to be topless, which is Austin. I don't know if you've ever been.
I've never been to Austin.
I
guess I now know I can take my top off in Austin.
You can. But that was incredible, and that wasn't what I was planning on talking about. But I just was blown away, and I thought that both of these films kind of, not to go into BoJack Horseman, but they both kind of ended like...
Wonderful.
I love BoJack. But, like, we're responsible for our own happiness. Like, and at the end of Lady Bird and at the end of Mr. Roosevelt, like, it is kind of that realization that, like, first of all, I love that her and the guy didn't get back together.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I wouldn't be talking about the movie if they did.
I don't know. I thought he was kind of horrible.
It's hard for me to say, because that's the thing, is you're looking at this very complex thing where the runtime's only an hour and 30 minutes, but there's this whole section that's not even on screen. Like,
yeah.
who
Well, I
knows?
mean,
He
looking
seemed
at him
cool with
through
her.
looking at him through her eyes, I felt
Currently with Celeste, yeah, I hated him.
It's... I actually have really enjoyed that trend recently. I noticed it with Broad City, too. It feels very more real life. I feel like back in, 15 years ago, it was like, oh, we want this to feel real. So, the camera was, shaky. But now I feel like the way to make things feel more real is to introduce characters that don't have explanations, but feel complex. And I really love watching Broad City for that reason, because there's a lot of the time where they bring in their friend and they're like, oh, hey, it's so-and-so, or they're like, oh, we're gonna go hang out with Karen. Oh, I hate Karen, and she did that one thing. But then you spend the whole episode with Karen, and then she goes away. But then, a season and a half later, Karen comes back. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that felt like real life to me. I'm sorry. I don't just have 5 friends that I hang out with every week. And get together at the coffee shop and go talk about our problems. I was like, I have my coworkers, but I was like, but I'm more inclined to believe that I have a friend that I went to a wedding with, and then later, maybe a month or two later, got coffee with and talked about what we did between that point. That feels more real life, and I think that's a good trend to have of characters that obviously have lives, but we don't really need to explain it to you because it's from this person's perspective.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and that is a big part of Mr. Roosevelt, because, I mean, there's just so many characters, even at the beginning, the LA comics, the jerks that she's with.
Yes, yeah.
She starts to give this guy a blowjob. And he stops. He lets her keep going and then tries to tweet a joke, mid-sex act. And I was just like, oh my god. You're cringing so much at so many different parts of this movie, but they feel really real. And, I kind of feel like people do the same thing to Lady Bird, though. They do...
People try to tweet things while they're giving him a blowjob?
I
missed that part of Lady Bird.
No, yeah. No.
Sorry.
Twitter didn't exist when that came out, did it?
No,
that makes me
I
feel
don't think
old.
so.
Because that doesn't seem that long ago. It was set in 2002.
Yeah.
That was the year my brother was born.
That was the year before the first Pirates of the Caribbean came out.
Well,
I had to look it up. I was because we were when did that come out? We were all trying to figure out the code, 2003. I was I did not think that was 2003. I want you to bring
that up later, in a different context.
Yeah.
No, a completely different context. Just talk about time in relation to Pirates of the Caribbean.
I think it is.
Don't forget the 2002, also the year that the first Spider-Man and the Bourne Identity came out.
Oh my god, that's so long ago.
Big year, and she was just in Sacramento at a Catholic high school.
Well, I think we'll talk about that later. Stay on track with the Feminist.
But I think it would be easy to brush off these characters as simplistic. But I think the brilliance of, which I've seen a lot of people do, but I feel like the brilliance of this film is that it walks this line in presenting perspective, and you're looking at Lady Bird, I just skipped, but you're looking at Lady Bird through the perspective of an 18-year-old, but also through the lens of adulthood and nostalgia. I just was so well aware of how old I was watching this movie. And I was so well aware of what my view of the world was at 18 versus now, and where she is in her senior year of high school, and where I know adulthood will take her. And
you're I know your future woman.
And I mean, Greta Gerwig's adulthood has gone fairly well. She's progressed really well since high school.
Yeah.
Reality, though, is that it's not that it doesn't go well, but the view and the perspective that you have versus her, naivety, but also gumption, and, her kind of unbelievable belief in herself, which is something that at 18, not only do a lot of women at 18 don't have that, and looking at that unadulterated beliefhood that, I can make it, I can do this, without anybody else, and kind of that final scene of realizing that happiness is on her own terms when she's calling her mom at the end and saying, kind of taking control of her own happiness and being like, you can't be the mom, you're not stepping up as the mom, I will just be kind of the love, and I'm moving forward and kind of finding this path in my life. And I think that there's just this complexity with each character, and I just was blown away by both of these films, and I feel like ridiculously honored to be alive when I get to watch these movies, because I look back at the movies that my mom's generation grew up on and the generation before, and I remember as a kid, I always wanted these female characters that were more complex, and the complexity between her and her mom and the depression of the father and all of these different dynamics and how imperfect she is, and this best friend who is, you know, looked over by her high school and kind of washed over and is just the fat friend, which of course I related to. But I was just amazed at how she could capture these things. And there's this quote that I read, and I can't remember who it's by, but it said, watching Lady Bird is like watching life as it's being lived. And I feel like that is such an amazing kind of way to describe how I watched this movie, is it felt like you were literally watching kind of this real, raw journey, and imperfect journey, an imperfect character who says awful things to her brother, like doesn't do everything right. And I just love them. And what I was saying is, I so related, this is such an side thing, but I so related to have you seen Meet Me in St. Louis?
Oh, yes.
One of my favorite films of all time. Judy Garland is to die for. But there's this little girl in that movie. There's two little girls, and they are rambunctious, and they're dirty, and they, you know, make messes, and it's at this time where everyone's so beautiful, and, like, Judy Garland is getting engaged, and she's, like, 17. Like, it's a very different time period, and it's, like, you have to think, like, what little girls got to see growing up, and what you got to relate to, because, oh my God, I wish I had this character when I was in high school, because I had so much unadulterated confidence at 18, which is kind of the opposite, I feel. Like, I was so confident, I still am, but you just think everything is going to happen. You think everything is going to work out, and we know, looking through this, that it does for Greta Gerwig, but that it doesn't for the average Sacramento 2002 Catholic high school going teen.
Yeah.
So, I just loved it.
Well, you know, I was so fascinated by what you brought up about, you know, it's that quote, you know, it's like watching life as it's being lived. And I mean, do you think part of that is like it's because well, I mean, I should back up a bit. Like, I think about movies about teenage girls. I think about, you know, something like, you know, everything from something like Juno to Pretty in Pink. Like, they're all like about like a very specific situation or crisis or challenge. And Lady Bird, it's not really about one specific thing. It's just like about her life. It's just like, let's look at a year and see what happens here that shapes her. Is that part of it, do you think? Or
is that part of
like why it feels so real, and why it's so
like
revelatory?
being lived?
Because it's not about her getting pregnant. It's not about her not getting the guy, or it's not about the prom. It's literally just a crucial year in her life.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that that's a part of it. I think that I think it was important to have it not be a crucial part of her life, because we so often define women by the things that happen to them. And we see these movies, and it's always them getting pregnant, or them getting raped, or them getting, like, it's this event, and it's often not even their event. Like, it's not even something that they did. It's
or they're in control of.
Yeah, it's something that happened or happened to them, and they're just having to deal with the consequences, and how do I wade through this thing that happened to me, or around me, or whatever. And I think that this film is brilliant in that, one, the quote Greta Gerwig said, which is, I'm fascinated by, you know, what is it? I'm fascinated by what women look like when they're not seen through the eyes of men, or not seen through men. Oh, I have it on my Instagram, but I deleted it. But no. It's an amazing idea, and I think that you're seeing that. You're seeing women, you're like, when she's playing around with her friend, and they're lying on the floor, and they're not, you know, they're not worried of whether their dress is, like, showing, and they're not, like, worried about how they look or how they seem, and so much of this film is her kind of trying to figure out who she is and who she wants to surround herself with and what friendship is and what actual love looks like. And I think that the journey in and of itself through the year is what brings power to the story. It's not this one defining event that she'll later go on to forget or will allow this film to define her as. This is this character who's just living and trying to navigate it with all of these obstacles that are real life obstacles that people deal with. I mean, I refuse to see this movie with my mom because I've never seen a movie that is more like me and my mother. It is unbelievable. This movie and a Miranda Hart episode.
No, yeah.
Yeah. Where, you watched the show?
I've watched the whole thing.
Where she's in the therapist's office.
Oh, that's one of the best episodes.
It is one of the best episodes, but it is me and my mother to a T. I could have written it. It is telling you a lot about myself. But I could have written this. Like, this is my life. And seeing it in a way that, like, Natalie Portman said, I've been waiting to see this movie on screen for 20 years. And I literally have been waiting for 20 years to see this screen. And I just love that it's, like you said, I love that it's not just this one event that happened that she has to work through, and it's just this one little portion of her life, because we often define women by that one point in time. Whether it's one event, or whether it's like this one like relationship, or this one aspect of themselves. And this, it looked at her family, it looked at her friends, it looked at her dreams, it looked at, her dad and her mom, and how both of them impacted her and were catalysts. Like, without her mom, she probably wouldn't have as much drive to get out of Sacramento.
Yeah.
But there's also power in looking back from New York and saying, I get it. I appreciate Sacramento. I get what everybody did for me. I love it. But I have to move forward. And so I think, in a long response to you, I think it was important that it was like that, and I think that is why you get that feeling that it's life as it's being lived.
I loved what you said about, not defining her by one thing, and I was kind of thinking, like, with, movies about, young boys coming of age, we get, stuff like Boyhood.
Stand By Me.
Or
Stand By Me.
these really kind of, sweeping things where it's like, it isn't just one thing. And I've been thinking a lot about this movie, like, I was thinking, like what is it that, has made it so impactful and so important? And
I think you nailed it.
Yeah, I think so. I think that is that really speaks to why we're talking about it right now. Why people are going to be talking about it. Probably after all of us are gone. Not to be too morbid, but
I think it's actually really funny you bring up Boyhood when she was talking about that. Like, it's just life as we see it. I was like thinking about Boyhood, and it's funny. You're like wow. Boyhood took 15 years, and that movie was over 2 hours long, and Greta Gerwig did it in an hour and a half. An hour and a half.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, not sweeping her whole life, but gives that same feeling of just someone growing up.
Yeah, but it's the same feeling of
the same
like,
feeling.
We're
The
not
same
telling
feeling
one
I
specific
got
story,
from Old Boy.
We're getting we're looking at a broader perspective.
I was like, so once again, I'm like, maybe Greta Gerwig did something better than Richard Linklater. And in less time.
Yeah.
I think she did, but a lot of people wouldn't. That's fine. I really was excited that, I'm going to say it again for the millionth time, I was devastated she didn't get nominated for the director, but I was really excited for all the things that won, that movie won.
At the Golden Globes.
Yeah, that being said, who won Best Supporting? Wasn't it I, Tonya?
It was I, Tonya.
Yeah, it was
that
Allison
devastated
Janney,
me,
yeah.
and I love Allison Janney, so I'm sure she was fabulous.
What I've heard about I, Tonya is that it's actually a very similar relationship, just bolstered to an extreme.
Yeah.
And that's my one worry about Metcalf's performance, is that it's actually very real and very subtle.
But that's why I like it.
And, well, then again, that's what... Again,
I know, but that's why I want Metcalf to win, is because holy crap.
Exactly.
I saw both, and I
Okay.
do believe Metcalf should have taken it. Allison Janney is wonderful. She's always wonderful.
She's going to be great always.
She's Allison Janney in it.
Yeah.
Lauren Metcalf actually encompasses a character.
Yeah, I
So
will, and I think when you can get a point across with subtlety, I mean, you could be brazen and beat you over the head and laugh about it, but I think it takes more craft and talent to get all that across with a single motion or a single line. And she nails it. And Metcalf's just been doing great work for years.
And the emotion that I felt when Metcalf didn't get out of the car and drove away.
That's
that
painful.
is so real. Like,
that is
people
real.
are that petty, and people do these things out of hurt and out of pain that is, you never, like, on the outside, you can't comprehend.
Well,
and when she drives away and then runs back in, like, sobbing, I just was like, oh
well,
my
and
God.
also, we keep talking about all these people we kind of see through the lens of Lady Bird, but I love that moment because that's like one of the few moments you don't see her. Lady Bird is gone. You see
That's true.
everything that she deals with in that one moment, and then that circling back. Oh, that broke my heart.
It totally broke me.
And then I actually made me think of my mom when my sister left. Like, every time that she'd come back home and every time she left, my mom would cry again.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she would go, because she was living in LA and chasing her dreams. And she knew she would leave. She's like, I'm going to be here for 5 days. Come by day 5. I was like, why is mom still crying? And she goes, even to this day, she goes, it gets a little bit easier every time, but it's also, I just wish she was here. Like, and it's true. I think moms mean well. They don't dislike you. And I think that's actually better. Like, she's detrimental, but, like, never intentionally. Tanya, she's detrimental, not technically.
As motivation?
Yeah, like, she doesn't mean it, but come on. Like, how far do you have to go? But I grew up here, so I'm like, Gresham, what are you gonna do?
I know.
I can say that. I've been here since I was 2, okay? I know what's going on.
Yeah, I agree, and she isn't perfect, and it comes from a place of the best intention, but it also just shows power. Again, just like, it's on you. Like, this is your mom. She is flawed. She's coming from the place of best intention. Will she change? No. So it's on you to kind of be that person, to kind of be like, all right, peace out, and kind of become an adult. Like, in that moment when she calls her mom, in a way, it's the most adult she is. Even though she's moved, she's done all this stuff, she got crazy drunk, she made poor decisions. Like, it's in that moment where I feel like she's kind of reclaiming, like, regardless of how you're hurting, regardless of what you do, like, this is my story and my journey, and I'm continuing.
I think she might actually get the director's nod. I think she will. I think
she got the DGA nod.
After Natalie Portman said what she said, did you watch
Oh yeah.
And Ron Howard's there, and she's like, and here's all male directors. Like, the Academy better step it up, because
I think there's been so much backlash, and also the Globes are really no great indicator of anything.
Yeah.
I mean, the Globes are
but it
nuts.
goes back
it's
and
a
forth,
crazy world.
Because, like, the Oscars So White, like, they've had years where they're completely not credible, and it's just bullshit movies, and Crash, and just crap. Like, it goes back and forth. I feel like they're both just flawed as shit.
I personally have no hope in the Academy.
Yeah,
I failed so many times.
I just take them for what they are and just run with it.
I like it as a ritual.
Yeah.
We all come together and, like, kind of look back on the year category by category. I tend not to care for, like, a lot of the specific films they nominate. I mean, just, like, when it's, like,
you're always going to be disappointed.
Yeah, like, when an organization that says, like, Argo is the best picture of the year. Like, I liked Argo. I thought Argo was fun, but it's like, really, that's the movie you give, like, the highest honor to?
Spotlight.
Birdman. I like Spotlight a lot.
I will defend Spotlight. I love Spotlight.
I think Spotlight's
but
great.
King's Speech?
Oh, no, we can all agree on King's Speech.
I actually liked it,
but can anybody remember what
I
else?
would put it nowhere near the highest honor in the movie.
What came out that year?
Social Network, which should have won.
Oh,
I don't know. I feel like the Social Network
Inception.
Inception. I would actually probably have given it to Inception. I feel like Inception is actually held up better than Social Network.
Oh,
I love the Social
Inception,
Network, though.
But I do like the Social Network.
Yes.
I have a strong hatred for Mark Zuckerberg, so I can't even enjoy that movie.
Well, and
He is
also
like
it doesn't help.
a real life Cusco.
Well, also with your face blindness, I mean, the Winklevoss twins being played by Armie Hammer on both occasions, that probably would not do well with you either.
It was confusing. But
are you not an Armie Hammer fan?
no, I'm face blind. So
okay.
I can kind of, for most people, like, I would probably recognize all three of you out in public, but there's certain, like, people that, certain types of faces I struggle with. Like,
Generic white dudes.
out of, yeah.
Generic white dude.
Generic white dudes, like, growing up, I couldn't tell the difference between Matt Damon and Leonardo DiCaprio for
Okay.
a long time, until they got old. Now Leo, I can tell the difference. Like, I can tell the difference, but
Yeah,
I
Bob.
couldn't for a really long time, so, like, The Departed was not a good movie for me.
I would argue that The Departed is not a good movie, period. But
Oh.
that's
Mitch
a whole
would
other
agree with
thing. Yes.
But yeah, Mark Zuckerberg is Cusco in human form. Do you know who I'm talking
Yes,
about?
Emperor's New Groove.
Yeah, I need
Oh,
Eartha
I'm an
Kitt.
adult man. I think I know what I'm
Eartha Kitt
talking
to come
about.
teach him some lessons, because he's a fool.
If it helps, the social network does not paint Mark Zuckerberg in the best light.
Just
That's true.
Timberlake.
That's
it's
true.
so shiny and white. I don't know. It's just a bunch of guys screwing over their friends to
You
become
sound like a lot.
millionaires.
You sound like Alana from Broad City.
Oh my god, that is the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me.
That sounds like a sentence
Oh
she would
my
say. It's just so shiny and white. Justin Timberlake.
You just said that oh god, my night was made.
Well, I think that is the perfect note to wrap up on.
It's a ridiculous note.
Actually, I do have one question.
Oh, yeah.
And
Sure.
it's specifically for you two. So at the beginning of 2017, it was not painted as the year for women. It was no.
That's putting it lightly.
I mean, it
Trump.
really. I mean, Trump comes in office, and what do you guys do? You just go, well, fuck that, and you all step up to rise to the occasion. But I mean, 2017 really has. I mean, for better or worse, it was a great year. You get the Me Too, the Time's Up, these great movies we've all talked about today. But at the beginning of the year, I did not see any of that coming, and I'm so happy at the end that we are. Do you see that pattern continuing? Do you hope to see? Do you think that might continue in 2018? I mean, we all hope it will, but do you think we'll lose steam?
So I'm a cynic, and I believe that we are in a moment, and that's fantastic. I don't think this moment is going to last. I think.
Well, we just talked about Dolores, so.
Yeah, so it will disappear, and then maybe 10 years from now we'll have another moment. But that's just my cynical perspective on things.
My cynicism is a little different. I think as long as they continue to make double or triple the amounts of money and have the double, like, they can't make it equal. They have to do double or triple. As long as they continue to be more successful, it will continue. I am a little worried, though, because when is Wonder Woman 2 coming out?
November 1st, 2019.
2019.
You got that in lockdown.
Oh, yeah.
I always know
I have
he'll
an
know.
obsession with release dates. you
Yeah,
know.
he's the
He's the calendar man.
Yeah. But, and so that's not in 2018. We have A Wrinkle in Time. That is going to have a lot of weight on its shoulders. There's a lot of excitement for it, but it's also black director, a lot of black leads, and how will that be successful? So I think that as far as blockbusters go, it's just a money game. The more like Lady Bird, Mr. Roosevelt, Colossal, those films, I don't know. I think if they continue to keep hiring female directors, yes. But if they're continuously shut out or we're not given the same... Like, Greta Gerwig not getting directed matters. Jordan Peele not getting a nomination matters. And it's because directing is what we hold at the highest level. Like, the Ron Howards and the Steven Spielbergs and the Kubricks have a level of prestige and respect that no actors do. Like, they are the kings of Hollywood. And that's literally what they are because they've only ever been kings. And so I think we are keeping them kind of at a safe level at this point. I don't think we're pushing them as far as they deserve. And so as long as we keep them at this safe level, it's not going to keep going. But I hope so.
And the more we pat ourselves on the back for all these things, and these numbers come out and the numbers speak for themselves, and we are not really progressing. And as far as adding women into roles and back, into different aspects, whether director, cinematographer, whatever.
Writers.
Yeah, writers.
Yeah.
We're just not giving them those roles. We're just highlighting the ones who have them right now.
Exactly. And I mean, I am worried a little bit about the victimization of the Me Too movement and the Time's Up movement. Like, it is kind of going toward, like, we're not victims. Like, we are survivors. We are moving forward. It's not this always just, like, these are the things that happen to us. It's, which is what Hollywood, I kind of feel like, is making it into. And so that is my concern from this movement, that it's going to be like a splurge of like surviving victims of things and like those stories. And that's what I'm worried about in 2018 and 2019 and going forward, is just those stories, because the brilliance of Lady Bird and the brilliance of Mr. Roosevelt and the brilliance of all the movies we talked about today is that they're not just victims or like overcoming being like a woman or bad things that happen to women or the struggles of that. They're actually just real characters with real stories, and if we don't continue that, then it won't go.
Yeah.
I'm really worried about like it just turning into like another victim survival revenge crap.
So the outlook here seems bleak.
Well, yeah.
Let's hope it gets better.
Well, for every step forward, you take 2 steps back.
Exactly.
So,
Well,
eventually
I was
there.
thinking, you said, in 10 years you'll have another moment. I was like, well, hopefully, maybe it will happen, but maybe the next one won't be 10 years in between. Maybe we can just keep shortening the gap until it's just like constant.
Yeah.
That's the only hope we have.
And we need men to see these movies and perpetuate these movies and look at their unconscious sexism of how they undercut them, and how even the guys that like these movies can in the same breath
cut it down.
And
Oh, yeah.
so we need to bring that into the conversation too, because we're just not going to be able to do it without men. And it's not because women aren't capable of it, it's because the people in power in Hollywood are men.
It's the men who have to say, okay, come on in.
Like, I know we want to think this, but Oprah isn't going to save everything. Like, we
everything.
need other women and men in power to support and highlight and spotlight on those women, because their work is just as valid, if not more valid, than the nepotism that often is taking place in Hollywood and has put people who aren't deserving in very high places.
I absolutely agree, and I think kind of, talking about the Me Too movement and the Time's Up movement, like, I think, like, there has to be, I think you're right, men do have to take part, because I think there's, like, a lot of, there's some confusion among like men, like, well, what's the end game? Like, well, I think the end game is that men as a gender, have to do better, because otherwise, otherwise, in some ways, like, it's just going to be an endless loop of the same problems. And
I'm going to say something that I don't know. I also want to say, like, with men trying, like, we women also need to be forgiving that they are trying and stumbling. Because I feel like there's a lot of, like...
We try and then we get like, not like that!
Yeah, like, how dare you? And he gets ostracized. And
you
it's
don't know.
Okay, guys, like, at least they're trying, they're attempting to get where we're coming from, and we need to support that instead of, blame them. Because we can't really move forward until everyone sees.
Yeah.
And I think that will be easier when, like, the Weinsteins and the Lasseters and the Spaceys and all the really violent, awful, horrible people are out. Because I think right now it's hard to, like, when they're still able to make money and make movies and profit off of all of this, it's hard to weed through everything, because it's like, cool, you're a nice guy that's just saying a sexist remark, but these men are all in power abusing women on a daily basis. Like, cool story, bro. Like, I think that it's hard to walk this line, and we're in this really pivotal time of how do we take down these big figures, so the real people who are maybe damaging and don't realize it, or don't know how to unlearn kind of the gender, like, sexism or racism that they've learned. Like, it's hard because we're just like, okay, well, get the rapists out. Come on! Like, just, like, come on! And Alec Baldwin, stop talking, ever. I never need to hear your voice again. Goodbye. Oh, only as Trump. I never want to hear him again. I did like Matt Damon being like, I just need to shut up.
Yeah.
I was like, good.
He's the perfect example of the good guy who just doesn't know any better.
When to stop.
Yeah, and like, you're just like, you know what, we'll get to you. As you're saying, we'll get to you, we'll help you, but like, we got bigger fish to fry.
Yeah, like, let's get John Lasseter out
Yeah.
right now, not on a leave of absence. Like,
Yeah.
that's what we need.
All right.
I think shall we leave off there? John Lasseter, get out.
John Lasseter, get out of here.
John Lasseter, if you're listening to this, you know, to take these words to heart, because I wholeheartedly agree with them. Thank you all. This has been such an amazing journey going on with this podcast. If you like this podcast, and god damn it, why wouldn't you? Please click thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at T.H.O Movie Reviews, and check out all the great reviews and content we have at thomoviereviews.wordpress.com. I'm your host, Bennett Campbell Ferguson. I'm here with Mandy Stark. I'm here with Hanna McGrath-Perdue. I'm here with Maxwell Meyers, and from all of us here at T.H.O Movie Reviews, happy movie watching.